Hey guys, Fundamental Basic here. Today we're going to be taking a look at primary colors and how we can use knowledge of primary colors to help us in Adobe Photoshop. So I'm starting this video off with a little clip of myself doing a painting, and I thought that I would add this in at the start just to iron out the misconception that red, yellow and blue are the primary colors. The RYB color set is kind of old school and you'd only really use it for when you're doing a painting. And when you actually do use this color set, you will also have to have some white and some black paint to go with it if you want to achieve any really good level of detail. So when we're working in a digital workspace, like when we're using Adobe Photoshop, you want to forget about this set of colors. It doesn't help us at all. Alright, so let's jump into Photoshop and take a look at the color sets that we'll actually be using. Okay, so these are the two color sets that we use in Adobe Photoshop: additive and subtractive color sets. So these two color sets are the opposite from one another. We use one when we're working on a screen and the other one when we're working on paper. So additive color mixing, when we're working on screen, it mixes lights together, and the more color that we add, the more light we achieve on our screen. So I'll give you a little bit of a demonstration. These are the lights that you have inside of a television screen: red, green and blue. And I've set these little discs here to behave the same way that lights do inside a TV, and I've used that with this little setting down here, linear dodge. Okay, so I'm going to grab this red disc and put it on top of this green, and you can see that when these two lights come together they make yellow, and when I get this blue disc, we add the blue to the red and we get magenta, and when we add the blue to the green we get cyan, and when they are all stacked on top of each other we can get white. So this is the way that the lights inside of a television work. You just have to adjust the levels of each one to get all of the colors in between, and when you add them all together we get white. So this is the black to white spectrum, or the additive spectrum, where we are working with lights. Now the subtractive color set is the opposite, alright? So this is when you have images on paper and we are mixing ink, dye or paint. And this might be a little bit weird to think about, but the more color that we add, the more light we subtract from our canvas or our piece of paper. And that is because white is the brightest possible light that you can have when you're working with like a printer, alright? So our colors, our primary colors in the subtractive color set are cyan, magenta and yellow. And I've set these discs to behave just the way that they would when they are printed out on paper, and I've done this by using the multiply setting. So I'm going to grab this yellow disc and put it on top of my magenta disc, and grab my cyan disc and do the same. And our primary colors work in reverse. So we start with white, we have our primary colors cyan, magenta and yellow, and when we mix yellow and magenta together we get our red, magenta and cyan gives us our blue, and then cyan and yellow gives us green. And we just vary the levels of each one to get the colors in between. Alright, so I hope that's making sense. We have two opposite processes of mixing colors together, and our colors are linked together in the way that they work. The primary colors from each set are the opposite set's secondary colors. Okay, now let's have a little look at how we can use this knowledge to benefit us when we are working in Photoshop. So I'm going to hit Control N, which is what you press when you want to start a new file. You can also go File, New, and this same dialog will come up. Alright, so I've got clipboard as my preset, which is really good because I've got an image copied and I'm going to be using that image in just a second. And we'll start off with the RGB color mode. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control V, which brings in my image that I've got copied. And now this is a stock image that I pulled off of DeviantArt. Alright, so the cool thing about images in Photoshop is that we can see the channels working together. So the channels, what I mean by that is red, green and blue. So this is a digital image, it's not meant for printing, it's going to go up on the web. It's not being designed to be printed out is the main thing. So for that we're going to use light to produce this image. And down here we can see the red channel, the green channel and the blue channel. And it's in black and white just to give us an idea of how much detail each channel is bringing to this image. So if we drop our red light out of it, we can see what happens when just the blue and the green channels are mixing together. It's cyan essentially. We get blue and green lights mixing in together, and the light that is predominant is a cyan light. So let's drop the green. We have red and blue just working together, and now it's magenta-ish. The primary light is magenta. And let's do the same with our blue. Okay, so our green and our red lights are working together, and I think this is kind of the nicest one. It has the most contrast because you can really see the green highlights and the red highlights and the yellow shining through while it's mixed together. Alright, so that's an RGB file and how the channels work in an RGB file. Now let's make a new file again, but this time we'll set our color mode to CMYK. Now you might be wondering why it's called CMYK. Well, K stands for key, and key means black basically. So if you look in this channels section down here, CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Now let's see what happens, first of all, if we unplug the black ink. As you know, printers prefer to use black ink instead of a mixture of them all together to save on ink levels, alright? So let's pull the black ink out first and see what that looks like. It looks a lot smokier, doesn't it? Because the really black blacks have all been pulled out. So with the black ink, you can really see the black of the tree trunks and the shadows on the steps and the shadows in the bush. And when we remove it, it makes our image look a lot smokier. Alright, so we'll leave the black ink in there. Now let's see what happens when we unplug the cyan. So we have yellow and magenta working together in this image to scale up to our red colours, don't we? And that makes it look more of like a sunsetty sort of image. If we unplug the magenta, it's very green. We've got our yellow and our cyan mixing together to make a nice green colour. And if we unplug the yellow, I'm assuming, yeah, it's sort of more of a noon kind of colour with just the magenta and the cyan mixing in to make a bluey light. And if we look at each colour with just its black in there as well, that can also be kind of cool. So with just cyan and black, it looks very faded. In magenta and black, and with just yellow and black as well. Cool. And when we get a bit more advanced with this kind of stuff, we can use our knowledge like this to do all kinds of cool things. So yeah, we can adjust the levels in, you know, any way we want, but I'm going to talk more about that in another video. So I hope you've learned a thing or two, and I will catch you next time.